Next up, we are going to have Vicky Carmichael from Tito, and she's going to be speaking to us about design by doing. So practical product design, like you just heard Kevin talk about, big system scaling, and like, big and small companies both have to challenge these things, whether it's like in-house or with an agency context. But how about if you just need to get some stuff done, right? Well, that's what we're going to talk to Vicky about. She's got really just stinking strong background in marketing, communications, and events, which I would, hope you would have that sort of background when you work with a product like Tito, which she will most definitely tell you about. For the last 6 years, she's been with Tito, and she is the head of product over there. So she's going to have a lot to say about the product design process and how you get from like ideation to completion in there practically. So in this conversation, we're going to talk about, like what it looks like to work for a small team and discuss, how we design and build products, and what other teams can possibly learn, from doing that. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and welcome Vicky Carmichael to the stage.
Hi. Hey, Jeff. Yeah, you get two for the price of one.
Oh my gosh.
Surprise.
Surprise.
So to intro Paul is the CEO of Tito. As you said, I'm head of product, and I actually started out as a Tito customer many years ago. I think we were the 35th customer to sign up to Tito, and that company actually that I used to work for is still a Tito customer to this day. Okay. And yeah, I came in initially transitioning from customer to kind of like customer support and experience, and then from there kind of naturally progressed to leading on product. And we have a couple of products now that we are working on. Well, 3 if you count Vito, which is the platform that people are watching this on right now.
Exactly.
So that's one of our products. And we also have Tito, which is a ticketing platform for events. And we also have a new platform that we're working on and gearing up to a public launch of in February, which is for invite-only events, and that's called IO. And we're a team of 6, so we're pretty ambitious to have so many, irons in the fire, but that's what drives us, and we're excited to talk about it today.
Well, Paul's suppressing a smile because he knows that that's a big task. I can tell. And also, Paul, I just have to commend you. It's super smart to bring big fans onto your team if you can bring them in, and knowing that Vicky was an early customer. Like, what did that look like? How did you gauge that level of interest to bring her in? And yes, I'm putting you on the spot.
Yeah.
Oh, I've got a story for everything, Jeff. Don't worry.
He really does.
Was it in Brighton? No, it was in Bristol, or
it was London.
Oh, was it London? I got it. So for years when we started, people would make jokes about running events for event organizers. And then I think it was a bit of a joke name, but somebody, I can't recall the person who did it, they ran a conference called ConfConf. And Vicky was one of the speakers at that event. And Kat Hunter did ConfConf. Oh, Amanda was there as well from Smashing.
Yeah,
that was where we met Amanda for the first time. Amazing. Yeah. Cool. And so we met Vicky there, got on really well. And very soon after that, Vicky told us that she was moving on from where she had been working. And I said, well, if you're ever looking for a change, just give me a shout. And it was about 9 months later, I think, that Vicky sent me a DM saying, hey, is that still an opportunity? And I took it back to the team. We were like, if we can hire Vicky, we must hire Vicky. So awesome. That was.
I think, I was a very vocal customer, so they knew they'd be getting bang for buck in terms of like suggestions for the product.
But it's a very unique features or skill set that Vicky has in terms of knowing the product, marketing background,
events, because obviously our customers are event organizers, and I have been an event organizer. So,
but not just been one, like has a degree in.
A master's, but who's counting?
Understands the market and then understood the product. And then Vicky ran our support operation for a number of years. So really, really got to know the product top to bottom, and has been leading it since for 5 years.
Yeah.
Gosh. And Vicky, when you come into a new company like this, that's going to be, a different culture, but clearly they wanted you, they were, openly trying to like court you in. And you had this advantage of understanding the product quite well and having quite the solid background academically for it. What did it look like for you to come in and start getting familiar, not only with the product itself, but the users behind it?
It was really eye-opening because I would have considered myself a power user at that point. And then I started doing support, and I saw that just how many ways there are to use the app, first of all, but also different levels of comfort and familiarity with technology in general. And to now be working on building features and actually implementing things or leading on the delivery of features that people will use, it helps so much to have had that background of dealing with customers directly, because that informs you more than anything else, I think. I mean, as I said, we're a small team, so like in terms of doing kind of formal UX research, it doesn't really, we don't have like capacity to do that, but we kind of have, some would argue, the next best thing, because we all cover support within the team. We don't have any dedicated support staff. We like rotate between us, the engineers, the founders, myself. So all of us are dealing with customers every day, and there's nothing more valuable when you're designing a product or building a product to be talking to the people who use it every day. And there's no kind of separation of like it getting filtered through support staff.
That's great.
Like quite often somebody will report something, a couple of days later we kind of implemented something that solves their problem, because we are small, because we're flexible, because there's nothing stopping us. So like even, just to quote a small example, a couple of days ago somebody said it would be great if you added anchor tags to the event homepage so that I could link somebody to jump to a specific section. And we were like, yeah, I'd see no reason why we wouldn't be able to do that. And by the next day we had delivered it. So it was just a small quality of life improvement, but that's what's so great about working directly with the customers and being able to respond to their queries directly.
Now I have the benefit of knowing, or being at least familiar with Tito, because I used to work on a product, or on a WordPress plugin called the Events Calendar, which was like well, I was product developer for that. And so I was very familiar with the like RSVP and ticketing system behind Tito and all that, and of course was in part of my like, I mean, we didn't look at you as like direct competitors, but it was like part of the like competitive landscape. So I was able to like look into some of that. And we also were a small team at one point before it was bought up and acquired by a larger company. So your relative small size is a benefit at the moment. Like, how do you balance that growth? And at what point is it a tipping point to where you start having to have conversations like what Kevin is talking about when it comes to scaling up? Because then you start developing, you get this like silo mentality that Kevin was talking about, and you don't get that nice instant flow and collaboration between disciplines. Do you see yourself ever reaching that tipping point?
I don't know if you're best placed to answer this. I mean, in terms of growth of like the team, we've been very static for the last 5 years. It's been the 6 of us. So, I mean, I don't think we're going to like explode in size anytime soon, unless something drastic changes. But
and we could probably handle a lot more business without growing the team too much. It's a really good question. We've taken this weird circuitous route where we've reached maturity in terms of the technology without necessarily growing the team or our revenues along the same angle, other than that we can sustain ourselves reasonably well. So it feels like what got us here will certainly get us a little bit further. I
mean, there are definitely roles that it would be great to have like dedicated people to cover in the team, because we do everything ourselves. So like if you consider everyone works on the product directly, so there's 3 engineers, like a design co-founder and a technical co-founder who's our CEO, and our design co-founder is our COO, and then me, head of product, who's not an engineer but is like adjacent. And then so you'll have noticed there I didn't mention design, I didn't mention marketing, I didn't mention sales, I didn't mention support. we do everything, but just between us. And that, some would argue that's why nobody has heard of Tito, because like we're so busy working on the product that we don't necessarily have like the resources and the time to shout about ourselves. We're trying to be better at that. So I mean, we could afford to grow, like we could afford to double in size and probably still all be very, very like focused. You know, like I don't think there would be that much of a silo immediately unless we were to, you know, 10x our company size.
You know, I gotta say that's a refreshing perspective from both of you on this, because my experience, and I don't know if others feel the same, but I feel that the prevailing sort of ethos in just growth culture is bigger, faster, cheaper. Even though we all know you can only have two of those at a time, we always try to go with all three. Sure. Yeah, and yet it seems like, well, no, we always have to get bigger and faster and cheaper. But the problem is that doesn't scale incredibly well all the time, and you have to keep growing in order to do that. And you have to keep feeding the machine. Like Paul, I'm really interested, you know, at the founder level of this sort of thing. Like, what sort of temptation do you have to fight, you know, to like grow bigger? Because there is this like
a great question for you.
Yeah,
it's not for lack of want. But I have introspected a lot on this, and maybe a couple of years ago, if I had said this out loud, I would have like said it in a mawkish sort of like, oh, whatever way. But I fundamentally do not care about money, right? And this is not a good thing to not care about when you want to grow a business. But it took a long time for me to realize why I don't care, because I do care about having the ability to produce work. And in our society and culture, money is the driver behind doing work. So I kept getting caught in a net. And the closest equivalent I could come up with, and this is not to diminish the success we've had to grow the business to where it is today, but it was basically starving artist syndrome, where the reason I taught myself programming 25 years ago was so that I could play music and have my bandmates update the website, right? Hey, and then
roll in that boat.
Somebody said, hey, could I hire you to make my website? And literally 25 years later, I'm still waiting to make enough money so that I can sit and play my guitar.
You don't have time.
And I think that's in a nutshell, that's it. I think that I derive flow and pleasure from making things in the same way that I derive that from playing music. And the difference is that I never sought out to make money from playing music. So therefore, the programming and the app development became the conduit to that. And so that's just how we got here. We made nice things, and we hopefully wanted to work with good people. And the piece that was missing, that I'm trying to be more intentional about now, is getting well paid for our work.
So that naturally makes me want to shift over to Vicky and say, hey, Vicky, like, how do you measure success when the money, the amount of money that's coming in isn't necessarily the top priority for, you know, at the higher up?
I mean, we had an all-day meeting today to talk about the future of the business. So this is coming after like a very intense day of thinking about this stuff. And like, it's not that we don't want to grow, right? I mean, obviously we do, and we are, but it's very, very slow, primarily because we don't have anybody dedicated to doing this. And what's really interesting is we attended a couple of industry events recently to like meet prospects and stuff. And we were kind of bandying around this figure that we've processed over $1 billion in ticket sales since, but nobody knows who we are. So we were like talking to, it's not just like the average person on the street, we're talking to event organizers, and they're like, so what is this? They're like, who are you? And so that's kind of encouraging in a way. I mean, in one way it's terrible because we're like, oh, well, we really need to talk about ourselves more. But on the other hand, if we've done as well as we have with nobody having heard of us, then, you know, just think what we could achieve if we like really put our minds to it and like, you know, made a concerted effort to get ourselves out there. So, I mean, yeah, like, I mean, for me, measuring success looks like happy customers, really, at the end of the day. Like, I feel like I'm doing my job well if I'm hearing feedback from people that we've solved a problem for them. And that's why I love kind of like talking to our customers so much, and doing support, because yes, initially maybe they're coming with a problem, but like 9 times out of 10, well, maybe not that much, but often we can solve it. Paul's got some visuals of like our customer success kind of metrics. We've got a lot of very satisfied customers. So that's what success looks like to me at the end of the day, because I've been managing events. It's very stressful. And like you don't want your ticketing software to be something that's causing you more stress. And so if we can minimize that stress for people, then that's a job well done.
Well, that's really interesting. So that because it makes me automatically want to ask, like, how do you prioritize the work that you do then? Because clearly you get feedback from customers, and that might even be directly through a support form or an email. It sounds like, it's very organic. There's not multiple levels of like blockages to get to you, which is very cool. So how do you filter in and collect all these things and then decide what to actually work on from there? And do you have any sort of screens you can show us on that, just to give us like a little glimpse into the secret sauce?
So yeah, so I'll show you my linear in a sec, but basically it's a mix of kind of listening to customers, and they'll tell you the same things over and over again, and then the other part is instinct. So like sometimes, because we have values that we abide by as a company, and sometimes you get a lot of people asking for a particular thing, but it just doesn't sit right with you to do it. Like a good example of this would be kind of really invasive tracking. Like some of the bigger customers, they want to chase you around the internet and like do retargeting and
all the eye tracking tests and everything.
No, but just kind of, like a lot of data. And another example would be like bloating out the registration form with a ton of fields just for people to be able to secure their ticket. And that is antithetical to a great user experience, in our opinion. And so we kind of push back. So it's not just if you ask for it a lot, we'll do it. It's if you ask for it a lot and it's something that feels right to us, we'll do it, right? And the reason I say if you ask for it a lot, there's only 6 of us and there's a lot of things that we could do. So sometimes it does take a bit of shouting to finally get us to prioritize something. But that's kind of like how we select what to work on. And then I don't know if, let me jump to linear. I don't know if my screen can get shared, Amanda.
Here it comes. There it is.
Cool. So I wrote a post recently about the fact that we moved to linear and how it's impacted our productivity. But just for me to be good at my job, I've set up like a bunch of filters that nice. I feel like give me superpowers. So like, for example, like things that are stale but in progress, like these are tasks that people have been working on for a while. And so this gives me an opportunity to go, okay, maybe but like the status hasn't changed, so maybe I can go, right, is this still a priority? Is this maybe something that we can bump, or do we need to kind of promote it? Tasks that haven't been prioritized yet or require design or are overdue or whatever. Like this is kind of how I get a little bit scientific about it. But a lot of it is instinct, quite honestly, and just what feels right to us.
But it's instinct developed over 13 years of building event software
and honed by talking to customers every single day. Like there's not a whole lot of guesswork really. Like if we were to sit down and tomorrow and go, we've got nothing to do, which is never going to happen because our backlog is incredibly long. But if we were to sit down tomorrow and go, we've got nothing to do, what could we do? It wouldn't take amazing. It wouldn't take us very long to think of something that our customers want and that would be a good addition to our app. So yeah, we're not short of things to work on. But yeah, obviously I'm not going through everything, but this is kind of how we
seeing that. It's really helpful, because it does show, that like you're not just talking about certain types of like requests, but we're talking about bugs, and then how to prioritize those. And how many things have even been lingering? I'm seeing that stale in progress. That's like,
that's probably worth talking about. We moved to a new support and feature development cycle recently that was kind of,
yeah.
it's somewhat based on gut, but somewhat on experience, and it's been working so well.
Yeah, so this blog post that I wrote recently about our switch to linear, one of the things that we did at the same time was we changed our kind of development cycle cadence to move to 2-week cycles. So the idea is you don't necessarily have to ship something at the end of that 2 weeks, but it's a very clear kind of defined workload for that period, and it's all prioritized because we routinely over assign. All of our engineers are very ambitious, so they're like, yeah, I'll take it on, but obviously we can't do everything that's on our plate, but because it's all prioritized, they know what can drop off to the next cycle, and because I have all these filters, I can go in, and if it is really important, I can make sure that it gets, you know, assigned to a future cycle or whatever. So we find that for a 6-person team working across a couple of different apps, 2 weeks is a really good focus block of time to, like, we could ship a small feature in 2 weeks, or we could do a bunch of bug fixes or whatever, like and then for each of those 2-week periods we'll have a duty support engineer. So say I'm covering support, that will be my go-to person during that 2 weeks to be like, oh hey, can you investigate this bug, can you do this support query that was something that needs doing from the console that I can't do. I've got the duty support engineer to be my go-to person. So that's working really well for us. And I feel like our productivity, like, oh, well, if you want to see how much we routinely over ascribe to people, like this scope should be like 35 and it's always over. We completed 85 a couple of cycles ago. So we're a high-performing team, really. And this is Calm December we're currently doing at the moment. So actually we're doing a cycle that's lasting a whole month, and I've assigned very little to the cycle because, well, I don't know, Paul, if you want to explain a little bit about what Calm December means.
Yeah, so we came up with the idea in 2022 because it had been a year.
2020.
Was it 2020?
The pandemic year.
Yeah, maybe
21.
Maybe it's 21 anyway. It was just we were having meetings every day, and there was just pressure. And so it was an idea to have no scheduled meetings, no enforced deadlines, focusing on self-care, and basically
no pressure to work a full day.
Yeah. So yeah, and it was just basically do your own thing.
Yeah, it was like, you know, sometimes you don't necessarily get to work on the most satisfying thing because you have to work on the most pressing thing. And what we're saying is, for the month of December, obviously we still, you know, do customer support and all the things that our customers need because they're not having Calm December. So we still need to be there for them. But it's like nothing else is urgent. Work on the things that bring you satisfaction and joy in that month. And like,
yeah, and it was before this new 2-week support person setup, we were doing 1 day on, 4 days off support, and we were finding that just wasn't enough to get into the mindset. So
too much
having
context switching.
a whole month where you can just kind of work on your own stuff is really nice.
That is nice, and what an interesting incentive too, to offer people to, you know, to be able to be interested in what they do and feel like that they're having, you know, a voice in the product at the end of the day, because that's not necessarily scoped to user expectations necessarily, but it's to the benefit of those who work on it. I mean, that's a cool idea.
Talking about measuring success is like one of the measures of success that Doc, my co-founder, and I had from very early on was a happy team. And sometimes prioritizing that does mean compromising on traditional business success metrics, but it means that you can be very fulfilled in your work and happy ultimately to get to work. And I mean, speaking for myself, I'm very happy to get to work every day.
I like hearing.
I took a year off a couple of years ago. I had a baby, and I've been back for a year. Thank you. I've been back for a year, so I've got an almost 2-year-old, and yeah, like that is its own challenge and intense, and obviously it's nice to work for a company that, like, Paul's got kids, Doc's got kids. It's nice to work for did I say for a family? I meant for a company.
You didn't.
Oh, well, it feels like a family. I thought I had a Freudian slip. It's nice to work. Yeah. It's nice to work for a company that acknowledges that, like, growth at all costs, or like just vanity metrics, or like that isn't the be all and end all, and ultimately is about finding happiness at work, making our customers happy. It all sounds very trite and twee, but genuinely that is how we operate.
Yeah, I mean, you could be falling, you could be getting sick with how sweet saccharine and all is.
Sorry, everyone.
Naive.
Now, talking to customers like day in and day out, you know them extremely well, and you've identified them to us as event organizers for the most part. But knowing what I know about that space, it's more than just event organizers, right? You have people who are small business owners too, that have RSVP for like free event type things, or like nonprofits or like volunteering, stuff like that. Like what other types of like segments do you work with? And like, does that seem like, like, is it just event planners for you? Is that what you're trying to like keep it scoped to, or do you see, other areas growing as well?
I mean, it's definitely people running events, but we've got everyone from, I would say, like our kind of bread and butter and the typical customers we have are like tech conferences and design conferences and marketing conferences and stuff like that. But we also have like juggling conventions and like church meetups and TEDx talks and
two biggest spoon carving festivals in the UK.
The two biggest spoon carving festivals in the UK. You wouldn't realize that there are two, but there are. We've got them both. So yeah, it really runs the gamut, and occasionally you'll find people using Tito for things that we haven't necessarily designed it for, but they're making it work. Like we've got a device repair cafe. We seem to be booming in that market at the moment, and so like people will bring their toasters and blenders to get fixed, and they'll book it via Tito, or somebody's selling kayaking merch I spotted earlier using Tito. So yeah, people use it for all kinds of things. And we've got lots and lots of nonprofits, and we've got discounted rates for nonprofits and charities, so we get a lot of those customers as well. We've got the NHS, if you're familiar with the National Health Service in the UK. Some trusts are using Tito as well. It's a very varied customer base.
Oh, that's very fascinating, though, that you're able to like keep your product pretty laser focused. Well, I mean, you have expanded your product line. It's not to say that you're super narrow, but you've been able to, to keep a pretty tight scope on what your business is, but allow others to come in and use it in their own interesting ways. Do you find like a temptation to want to adapt a product for a use case that you may not have exactly designed for?
Well, that's IO, right?
Yeah. You talk about that.
Yeah. So last year we did have a very specific need arise for a customer, and it was sort of like they wanted to do invitations to an exclusive event, and there was a feature in Tito that allowed you to do that, but they wanted it to be not just white label. It had to look first party, their own HTML, CSS, and it was just. You could have used Tito, or you could have used to get something like that. But this was the genesis of our new product, which is called IO, which I can put on the screen if you want to see.
Please.
I can actually. This can be an exclusive reveal of our new marketing website, because this didn't exist. So I presented this at Smashing Conf Antwerp a few weeks ago, and Doc, just this design, it hasn't gone public yet. And it's basically an app that allows you to invite people. The HTML, CSS of the web and the email templates are entirely bespoke. Sending and receiving RSVPs, everything is customizable. We wrote a whole UI and integration with Apple and Google Wallet so that you could do custom Apple and Google Wallet passes with push updates. It's really, really secure because you don't want people sharing the links. Like 3 different levels of custom data. You don't even know what that means, but it allows you to do awesomeness. And the app is just like, it's so responsive. Like if you see me clicking around here, it's just super, super fast. It's just beautiful to use. And so we're really excited about that. And so it's a really good answer to that question of like a customer came with a very specific but adjacent, like we sort of joke that there weren't too many teams in the world that would have been able to put this together. We had it working from inquiry to launch in about 4 weeks, and it had this really, really specific features. And then from that, we knew that there was an opportunity to build a new product out of it. And it was very gratifying. But it was that kind of thing. It was like, we know we have the chops to do this. We know it's the right time. We know the technology. We had built Veto very quickly and kind of learned some lessons from that. And it was really gratifying to build IO. And that was just that kind of like this perfect storm of the right customer, the right problem, the right time. And we have a new product to launch on the back of it.
It was definitely the right time for me because I was on parental leave. So they did that 4-week thing. Well, I came back and I was like, oh, we've got a new product. Cool.
And now you've got to get up to speed with that product and get it into.
Yeah. And actually, that kind of worked out well because they'd been working on it for about 3-4 months by that point. And then I came in as a complete, like somebody who hadn't been involved. Are we still there?
Screen?
Oh yeah. I came in as somebody who hadn't been involved at all up to that point, so I was able to kind of bring a bit of a fresh pair of eyes, and I was like, "This is cool, but how do you use this?" And then we made some iterations off the back of that.
I'm just going to fly through the iterations. So Jeff, I did this for. Okay, so if I go to the presenter view, we can't see the screen now, so we're just trusting Jeff. Maybe if you.
Oh yeah, we've got it here. We've got it here.
Cool. Sure. This is just a 1 year flyby of the UI. This was last February, then March, and you can kind of just see things tightening up, like the spacing and the typography and the dashboard. We've got to June 2024 here. Just loads of little subtle updates. This was over the summer as we had another trial customer, a big customer, September, October. Just little tiny refinements. Again, we kept iterating, got to the end of October, and then this is when we decided to redesign. And we did this project around about Smashing, knowing that we were presenting actually at Smashing Conf in Antwerp. And we got on a meeting, and this is sort of speaks to your initial question about like how do you decide, or what makes you get a project done? Later, I think what happened was we had a meeting on Monday, the 22nd of October, and Vicky was like, guys, our UI kind of sucks. it was basically that.
I'm known for my candor.
And we were like, okay, let's pick 3 apps that we like. I think we chose Stripe and Linear and this CRM that we use called Atio. And we just took some inspiration, and just every day we just got together and iterated and refined the UI and took bits that we liked. And that got us to where we are now. And that's where the app is at. And then on the day, Doc had shipped dark mode, so dark mode was ready. So that it's all very by the like, I don't know. It's all very much guided by gut and instinct and just trying to make nice things.
Mm-hmm.
You know, my a good buddy of mine, Robin Rendell, wrote this post one time called "Vibe Driven Development." You know, and it was more like let's get the data out of product development type stuff, and let's just focus on the vibe. You know, and I mean that's a drastic like succinctness of his post. There's a lot more nuance to it, but that's something I hope we get to talk about in the Q&A a bit. Is like, how do you determine, not just out of a score, out of like, sure, you can say this is the highest priority thing, but it might not be the thing you actually want to work on, which is where your like Calming December comes in and things like that too. So it'll be interesting.
The word that comes to mind, like after being in software for 25 years, the experience and Doc's experience and the team's experience, it's craft, right? Yeah, and exactly. if you think of the word craft, it's not associated with like, I'm not going to calculate the angle of this gem that I'm crafting, or I'm not going to check the metrics on what kind of furniture people are buying. Like you're leading with art and creativity, and vibe driven. I reluctantly admit is exactly what we do.
I love that. I'm gonna extract the link and share it with the group because it's just a phenomenal read. Robin's such a good writer. But we'll pick up the conversation in the Q&A with the full panel. I'm looking forward to that. Just thank you so much for sharing all this of it. I mean, it's really interesting, like not just to see what a large company does and how they figure out all the priorities and all the different people's opinions on things and how you like break team silos down. But when you don't have any of those challenges right up front and you are small and kind of going off of a vibe, what does that look like? So it's really an interesting contrast between what you just shared and what Kevin shared right before you. That makes me really interested to see what Chris has got to share with us, because I think his talk is something a lot like all users are stupid. So it'll be really interesting to see how this works out.
Yeah, well, and I will say thank you and goodbye because I have to go and catch a flight home.
But I'll be at the panel.
Well, I'll see you in a bit, Vicky. Well, thank you,
Thanks,
you all.
Jeff.
We're
Thanks,
gonna
Jeff.
move
Thank
on.
you so much, everyone, for listening.
Oh, thank you so much.